Hello everyone. Here I'm taking up third chapter of your book, The First Flight. Two stories about flying, and presently I'm going to take up second part of it, The Black Aeroplane. This is written by Frederick Forsyth. We will come to know about this story in detail. I'll go for line by line explanation of this story. Before this, let me tell you what the story all about. Let me tell you about the author. So first, I tell you about this story. This is a wonderful story that will anyway inspire us to do great things in life. The Black Aeroplane is one of the acclaimed works by Frederick Forsyth. This story is basically revolves around a mystery. I know most of us love mystery novels, stories, and hence reading this one will not feel like a chore or any boring things to do. Surely, I'm sure we all will enjoy it. So, let's see what is there in the story. Introduction section. The Black Aeroplane, written by Frederick Forsyth, is a mystery story. This story revolves around the mystery. Who was the another pilot? So this is the question what you have to keep in your mind, and by the end of this story I may ask you who was the another pilot. So keep this in your mind. The narrator was on his way to England, hoping to have a good English breakfast with his family, but he saw great storm clouds ahead of him. There was huge mountain-shaped clouds. The narrator risked to enter in the clouds. No sooner he entered in the clouds, everything turned black. Fortunately, or accidentally you may say, he saw another aeroplane without lights on its wings. The pilot waved his hand to the narrator and asked him to follow him. The narrator followed the pilot of another aeroplane as his compass radio went dead. Even there was not enough fuel in his tank. With the help of another pilot, he landed safely, and when he went to the receptionist to thank the pilot, he was informed by the lady that there was no any other pilot, no any other plane flying in the sky that night. It might be his illusion, the lady told him. So, thus we can say the story Black Aeroplane, it teaches us that we should not give up our hopes. We should always try to help ourselves and never lose hope. The narrator believed that someone will help him, and at the end he was helped by the pilot of that strange black aeroplane. We learned that we should take the risk and accept the challenge. The narrator was in great trouble, but he took on the risk, and you may say God lended a hand to help. Let's talk about the author. Frederick Forsyth, he was born on 25th August 1938, Asford, Kent, England. He was British author of best-selling thriller novels, noted for their journalistic style and their fast-paced plots based on international political affairs and personalities. Forsyth attended the University of Granada, Spain, and served in the Royal Air Force before becoming a journalist. He was a reporter for the British newspaper The Eastern Daily Press from 1958 to 1961. He worked as a correspondent for the British Broadcasting Corporation, that is BBC. His experience as a news correspondent gave Forsyth the knowledge to write realistic thrillers. So let's see what is there in this story. The story starts from here. The Black Aeroplane, as you can see. The moon was coming up in the east behind me, and stars were shining in the clear sky above me. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy to be alone, high up above the sleeping countryside. I was flying my old Dakota airplane over France back to England. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. Dear students, it was a night time when the sky was clear and the stars could be seen twinkling. The pilot felt peace in being above a country that had fallen asleep. Means because it was, late night, 1:30 in the morning. You may say it was quite late in the night. The pilot felt peace in being above his country, being above a city that had fallen asleep while he was flying over France to England. It was 1:30 in the morning and he was fantasizing about holidaying with his family. He wanted to have breakfast with them. So everything was all right with him and he was quite happy about his flying. Now let me tell you, Dakota is an aeroplane which Arthur was flying that time. I should call Paris control soon. I thought as I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane, I saw the light of big city in front of me. I switched on the radio and said, Paris control, Dakota DS-008 here. Can you hear me? I'm on my way to England. Over. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. DS-008, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west now. DS-008. Over. So, this is the customary thing saying over. It means you want to tell the person you are talking to that you have finished what you wanted to say. So, when the aeroplane was in France, the pilot thought of informing the Paris control personnel about his presence and for instructions. At that time, lights from the Paris city were blaring at him and he informed the control agency, to which they replied with a further instruction on directions. The control room at Paris instructed him to 12 degrees towards the west because he told them where he was heading to. So that's why they gave him instruction what to do. They told him to turn 12 degrees towards the west. Now the next thing, I checked the map and the compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west toward England. I'll be in time for breakfast, I thought. A good big English breakfast. Everything was going well. It was an easy flight. After receiving the instructions, the pilot geared up and followed them while putting the last fuel tank into operation. All this time he was dreaming about his time with his family, and then he started thinking about having a satisfactory breakfast at the destination point at his home. He was calm as everything was going as planned. Here, compass, it's an instrument for telling directions. Generally, pilots in aeroplanes, they use such kind of instruments there. So we can say overall it was a very comfortable journey for him. He was very calm. He was satisfied because everything was going as planned. Now, Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds, storm clouds. They were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. I knew I could not fly up and over them, and I didn't have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. I'll take the risk, I thought, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. Now, see, the plane had crossed Paris when he started seeing clouds in the sky. The presence of clouds made it unsafe to travel by air because there were chances of a storm. The clouds were so huge and dark that the pilot compared them with black mountains. He knew he couldn't pass them, as it was impossible to go above them or escape them with the amount of fuel that was left in the last tank. The right decision would have been to fly back to Paris safely, but the pilot's decision making was clouded by his wish to meet his family. He was so desperate to be with his family and have that English breakfast that he had been dreaming of all day, that he took the risk of not going back, and thus he headed the plane right into the storm. Sometimes we come across such situations in our life when we have to take some tough decisions, though we feel like they would not be easy. It would not be easy for us, but still, since being with his family, having that breakfast, he prioritized that. So that's why he took that risk. What happened next? Let's see. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe my eyes. The compass was turning round and round and round. It was dead. It would not work. The other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. See, it was so dark because of the storm that nothing was visible outside the plane. He started losing control of the aeroplane. The compass and other instruments had also stopped working because of the bad weather, and he became helpless. Because nearly all the students ceased to work. That's why he became helpless. He could not understand what to do. Now, what did he do? He turned on his radio and tried to, find help from somebody from somewhere. Paris control, can you hear me? There was no answer. The radio was dead too. I had no radio, no compass, and I could not see where I was. I was lost in the storm. Then, in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. It had no lights on its wings, but I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. I was very glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. "Follow me," he was saying. "Follow me." He knows that I'm lost. I thought he's trying to help me. See what happened. He was totally lost in the storm. At the same time, he tried calling the Paris control agency who had helped him earlier when he told them about his direction, when he asked about directions to go to England. So he called them again, Paris control agency, who helped him earlier but couldn't connect because of the weather. In the midst of nowhere, when everything failed, even his radio failed, he saw a ray of hope when he saw another aeroplane there. He felt relieved when he saw another pilot's face and willingness to help him escape the storm. Means that pilot, the another pilot, he was waving his hand and he was asking him to follow him. He thought to himself that the other pilot is very kind, and he knew that he was lost and was that's why he was trying to help him. So he took that the next pilot, the other pilot, he was very kind, he was very helpful. He knew it well that I'm lost, so that's why he is trying to help me. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota so that it would be easier for me to follow him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. After half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. Now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes more, I was starting to feel frightened again. But then he started to go down and I followed through the storm. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of lights in front of me. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane, but the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The black aeroplane was gone. I could not see it anywhere. See what happened? Before I tell you, I explain this. Let me tell you the meaning of certain words. Runway, as you all know, a strip of hard ground along with, along which aircraft takes off and land. So that place, that area is called runway. Frightened, as you all know, it's terrified. Followed means chased. Obedient, one who obeys. The other pilot took his plane ahead of the lost aeroplane to make it easier for him to follow, while the author followed him like an obedient child. He was also panicking because there was very less amount of fuel left. It was the last tank, and even in that tank, very less fuel left. It was only then he started coming out of the storm and could see the runway to land his plane safely. Earlier he started to get frightened when he saw the fuel meter, but later at that point of time he saw the other pilot. He was taking his plane down. He followed him and he saw the runway there. He landed his plane safely. When he turned to thank the other pilot, he realized that the plane that had helped him had disappeared as soon as he came out of the storm. I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. I wanted to say thank you. She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another airplane? Up there in the storm? No other airplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. So, who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So these were the questions that came to his mind the time when he, the response what he got from the lady. Radar is a system for detecting the presence, direction, distance and speed of aircraft and other objects by sending out radio waves which are reflected of the object back to the source. So the author did not know where he had landed, but he was not afraid of leaving his plane unattended. He headed straight into the control room to ask about the other pilot. But to his utmost surprise, the lady, the receptionist, she informed him that there was no other plane in the sky except his because of the bad weather. The weather was not good, that's why they did not allow any plane to take flight. He is left astonished with a lot of questions unanswered in his mind. The questions about the identity of that pilot. So this was the last stanza. Dear students, as you all can see, the Black Aeroplane story, it conveys a message that courage is guided by faith. The pilot of Dakota plane was an experienced flyer, but he also got panicked when he got engulfed in the black storm. Still, he kept trying to reach to safety with the help of guide instruments in his plane. But when all the instruments too got jammed and he suddenly found a mysterious black plane and guided him. that guided him to. It was blessing in disguise, you may say. It was perhaps the pilot's courage that gave him faith, and he managed to find his way out of the storm. So faith is important to guide courage in the proper direction. The story also gives the message that one should never give up in the face of adverse times, difficulties. Difficulty should be taken by horns, and hope should not be abandoned. So this is the message that this story conveys. I hope you all have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.